Hello and welcome to today's lesson where we're looking at the Johari window, which can help you build trust in teams and as well as that help you to understand yourself better. Now, probably the best way to get to know yourself better is to have strong, open and honest relationships with your colleagues so that you all develop together. But having these kind of relationships is never easy. It takes trust. And the Johari window is a tool which helps build trust amongst the team, and at the same time it helps you to understand yourself and your peers better. So the Johari model was developed in 1955 by a guy called Joseph Lust and another guy called Harry Ingram, and they were from the University of California in LA. The word Johari can kind of sound esoteric until you realize, that it was developed by two guys called Joe and Harry, and it's just a combination of their first names. There are two key ideas behind the Johari window. So the first is that you build trust with others by revealing information about yourself. And the second is that you learn more about yourself by receiving feedback from others and learning how they perceive you. So let's take a look at the model. So the model itself is based on a simple square, which is broken into 4 equal quadrants, and each quadrant shows a different part of your inner self. Now, a key thing to note is that although each quadrant is the same size when you show the Johari window diagrammatically, the size of each quadrant relative to one another will be different from person to person. So, for example, a person who's an open book is going to have a big open area, whereas a person who's a lot more closed and considered about what they share is going to have a relatively smaller open area. But let's run through what each quadrant means in turn. So the open area represents things you know about yourself and which the group also knows about you. So it's going to contain information across a whole bunch of areas. So what your experience is, your skills, your viewpoints, what your attitude towards different things are, as well as your personality and what your feelings are. You can kind of think of the open area as being all those things you're really happy to talk about. The hidden area represents things you know about yourself, but that the group doesn't know about you. And that's basically because what we share with some people is different from what we share with others, and is kind of based on the relationship we have with that person and the trust we have with them. So, for example, we're going to share more of ourselves with our spouse than we do with our work colleagues, and that's natural. But in a work context, why we choose to keep certain information private could be because we find it embarrassing, or it could be because it makes us feel uncomfortable and vulnerable. The blind area is interesting. So it can be really easy to think that our open area and our hidden area, when combined, is all that we are. However, how others view us may be different to how we view ourselves. So this area kind of represents those things that others know about you, of which you are unaware. Now, there's a number of reasons why others know things about you that you don't. So perhaps they're worried about, hurting your feelings. Perhaps they've tried to tell us what they know, but we're so blind that we just simply flatly assume that they are wrong. And particularly relevant to a professional context is also, someone may withhold information from us because it gives them power over us. The final area is the unknown area, and this area represents things that are unknown by both you and by the group. So this might include a natural talent for something you have yet to even know you have. It could include talents in the workplace that you haven't discovered, maybe just because lack of opportunity, or you have lack of confidence, or lack of awareness or training, or a whole bunch of reasons. Now, although the model may seem complex, it is actually very easy to use. What we should be looking to do when using the model is to increase the size of the open area for both ourselves and our team members. Now, an alternative way to say that is obviously that we want to reduce the size of the blind area, the hidden area, and the unknown area. Now, for an individual, it can be said that people who have a larger open area relative to others are easier to talk to and easier to work with. And that's because people trust them, they don't particularly have hidden agendas. In a group context, a team that understands each other and trusts each other is going to perform closer to their maximum potential. And again, that's because everyone respects each other and has trust for each other. Now, there are 4 tools we can use to help us use the model, and you can see in the diagram how that affects the open area. And the tools are self-disclosure, feedback, shared discovery, and self-discovery. And let's jump in and look at each of those in a little bit more detail. So self-disclosure is where you tell your team something about yourself that you think they don't know. So, for example, perhaps you love working as part of a small team, but you get anxious when you get asked to work as part of a larger group. Now, an important point with self-disclosure is that you need to strike the right balance. You want to tell the group some personal information, but not personal information that actually should be kept private. When we disclose information about ourselves, we're expanding the open area because the line between the open area and the hidden area moves as our open area grows and our hidden area gets smaller. One thing in an organizational context that's important to remember is that organizational culture and the atmosphere in your office will hugely impact people's willingness to share information about themselves. So you may need to start really small with this. So moving on to feedback, this is where the team tells you how they perceive you through feedback, obviously. As an example, so perhaps you perceive yourself to be direct, forthright, and to the point, but your team simply perceives you as being curt. Now, just as with self-disclosure, it's important to strike the right balance when giving feedback. So, keep it constructive. Next, we look at shared discovery. So, shared discovery can be a sensitive topic. And in fact, this may actually not happen with the team, but you might choose to do it with a third party, such as a counselor. And in reducing the unknown area, this can actually lead to increases in all of the other areas. And that kind of depends on what one does with this new information they've discovered about themselves. And finally, self-discovery. This is the process of gaining insight into your own character and talents. And when we use self-discovery, we obviously decrease our unknown area, but it's worth noting that we also increase our hidden area. And that simply, we knew nothing about it, now we know something about it, but we haven't shared it with others, which is why it at least leads to an increase in the hidden area. So, that's the theory behind the model, but what steps can you take to use the model in practice and to build a high-performing team? So this is what I would recommend. So step 1, explain the concepts of the Johari window to everyone in your team. Step 2, explain that the goal is to increase the size of everyone's open area. With basically the more that is being shared, the more trust is being built over time. Step 3, it's important to remember that great teams built on trust aren't just created overnight. So you're going to want to arrange multiple sessions to work on the Johari model so you can gradually build trust over time. Step 4, in your very first session, start small. Ask everyone to share some small innocuous fact about themselves that others don't know. And then what you want to do is build on there in each session. Build on that in each session so you keep revealing a little bit more. Step 5, remind people that they should only share information that they want to share. You don't want people to damage their reputation or share really private stuff. Step 6, get everyone to have the opportunity to provide feedback to everyone else, one person at a time. So every person receives group feedback. And then step 7 is, in that process, remind everyone that people can be really sensitive to negative feedback. So you want to start slowly and you want to keep it really constructive. So to move this on a bit, when you work through the Johari model, it can be really tempting to listen to the feedback you receive, to acknowledge it, and then kind of take no action. So a much better approach is to think about where your general area of weakness is, and then come up with some kind of plan of action to address that. And one interesting way to do that is to map emotional intelligence to the areas of the Johari window. And then that can serve as kind of a guide for you to figure out what you're going to try and improve in your self-development plans. So as an example, if you realize that you are guarded in nature and therefore you have a large hidden area, then you could take steps to improve your self-management. Sometimes in emotional intelligence, that's known as self-regulation. So, for example, you could do that by working on your self-control, you could work on your trustworthiness, or you could work on your conscientiousness. Now, as another example, so if you discovered you had a large blind area, then you could look to improve your social skills, such as your empathy, you could work on your political awareness, you could work on your communication skills, you could work on your cooperation skills. There's a whole bunch of stuff you could work on. Now, if you're not too familiar with emotional intelligence and the different areas of emotional intelligence, then I've included a link beneath this video where you can read more if that is of interest to you. So in summary, using the Johari model allows us to build trust between team members and also allows us to better understand ourselves. When we use the model within a professional context, we should be aiming to increase the size of the open area for each member of the team. Increasing the open area in this way is going to build trust within the team. By starting small and building over time, a very effective and collaborative team can be built with a high level of trust between team members. And basically, over time, you're going to move more and more and more towards being a higher and higher and higher performing team. That's it. I hope you enjoy using the model and look forward to speaking to you again soon.